All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call this meeting of the Executive Branch Audit Committee to order. Can you hear us loud and clear in Las Vegas?
Yes, we can, Governor.
All right, thank you. We have all members present with the exception of Ms. Cross, and she is excused. By the way of remarks, I just want to thank everybody who's associated with this audit committee, particularly the auditors and all of you, and let you know that I really appreciate all of your hard work through the years. This will be definitely my final meeting, as well as the Lieutenant Governor and the Treasurer. And I know that I speak for them, although I'm sure they may have a few words of their own. But again, I want to thank all of you for your commitment and what you've done for the state and the hard work that you do as you go through each and every one of these audits. It's truly made a massive difference for the state and made the state better, frankly. And we always get down to talk about the savings, but the efficiencies and ensuring that we're doing the best that we can for the people of Nevada. I said in a couple other meetings at the Board of Examiners, if you look behind us, we've put up the flags of every county of the state, and that was something that I really wanted to do because it's a reminder that as public servants we represent all the people of Nevada, and with those flags all the people of Nevada are present here. And so again, my sincere thanks. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Treasurer, I'm not sure if you have any comments. I'm not trying to start a 2.5-month-long funeral dirge, but this is the last meeting of this committee.
Governor, Treasurer here. First of all, I second your comments. It's been a real pleasure working with you and with the other members of the committee. And I thank you, and I thank the Audit Committee for all of their hard work and certainly concern for the people of Nevada, which I know is our #1 priority. So thank you.
And
Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, and Governor. I was going to kind of say some of my comments to agenda item 9, which really is where we see and have compiled really the benefits of what we do with this committee and also the auditors who actually go out and do the work. And so I want to again just recognize sometimes these just unrecognized public servants who go about their job day in and day out and do a real benefit and a real service for the citizens of Nevada. And we see that reflected in our agenda item on for today. And again, I'll highlight some of those points, but echo both what you and the Treasurer have said and thank them for their efforts and thank this committee. It's been a real honor to be part of it. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Let's move to agenda item number 2, public comment. Is there any member of the public present in Carson City that would like to provide public comment to the committee? I hear and see no one. Is there anyone present in Las Vegas that would like to provide public comment to the committee?
No one here, Governor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. And let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the June 14, 2018 Executive Branch and Audit Committee meeting minutes. Have the members had an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any changes? If there are none, the chair will accept a motion for approval. Mr. Controller.
I have one small change at page 7 in the at second
Ron,
to the
he's always got something.
Say again?
You're not muted, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Go ahead, Mr. Controller.
Thank you. In the second to the last line of the second paragraph there, I used the term reined in. I've had trouble with this in the past, just like this. That's supposed to be REINED without the G. I don't want us to rein with a G. I do want us to rein in without a G.
All right, thank you, Mr. Controller. Are there any other changes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Attorney General has moved to approve the minutes of June 14, 2018. The Controller has seconded the motion. Any questions or comments? Just my only comment, Mr. Treasurer, you weren't present at that meeting, so may I mark you as having abstained from the vote?
You may indeed, Governor.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
If there are no further questions or comments, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That motion Passes unanimously, and if we would mark the treasurer as having abstained from the vote. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 4, which are information items, presentation of the division's audit reports pursuant to NRS 353A.085.
Good afternoon, Governor and committee members. For the record, Heather Domenici. Here to represent the Office of the Secretary of State is Chief Deputy Secretary of State Scott Anderson and Deputy Secretary for Elections Wayne Thorley. At the request of the Office of the Secretary of State, we performed an audit on the Secretary of State Elections Division. Our audit focused on one objective, ensuring the division improves oversight for Secretary of State Elections Administration. We make 5 recommendations to improve oversight. First, we recommend the division evaluate using risk-limiting audit methodology, or RLA, for Nevada's post-election audits. NAC 293.255 requires fixed percentage, non-statistical post-election audits in order to ensure voting machines accurately record all votes cast. This audit methodology may be ineffective and may result in samples that are smaller or larger than required to provide statistical confidence in election results. RLAs are based on a statistical audit methodology that includes margin of victory and risk limit, and that has a high probability of correcting incorrect election results. RLA audits continue until statistical evidence confirms the results, up to and including a full hand recount, and can be used to audit all Nevada elections and ballot measures. The division can use Help America Vote Act grant funds to implement RLAs. Second, we recommend the division evaluate using Oregon's recall petition signature verification methodology to help ensure election petition results are statistically supported. NRS 293.1277 requires a fixed percentage number, non-statistical methodology for election petition signature verifications. This methodology may not ensure accurate petition sufficiency determinations because it does not incorporate statistical elements such as risk or margin of error. Our research noted 2 recent recall petition attempts for Nevada state senators that were initially deemed sufficient to hold a special election using Nevada's methodology, but were subsequently overturned following court-ordered full petition signature verifications. Oregon's signature verification methodology includes statistical elements, and when applied to the signature verification results for the 2 Nevada recall petitions, we found that it correctly determined both petitions insufficient to hold a special election. Third, we recommend the division revise NRS and NAC to update and clarify state statutes and regulations. Sections of NRS 293 and 293B refer to standards that no longer exist and a federal agency that no longer has oversight over federal voting system standards. NAC 293B.110 is unclear in its requirement for voting system certifications performed by local election officials. NAC 293.255 only requires post-election audits of voting systems equipped with voter-verified paper audit trails, but excludes audit of paper ballots, including the system used in Carson City, as well as absentee, provisional, and emergency ballots. Revising NRS and NAC will allow for consistent interpretation amongst state and local jurisdictions subject to NRS and NAC requirements and lead to consistent election practices. Fourth, we recommend the division improve policies and procedures for approving voting systems and for oversight of jurisdictions' election practices. The division does not have documented policies and procedures for consistent review and approval of voting systems or for oversight of local election officials' compliance with NRS and NAC. Our testing revealed that many jurisdictions are not timely submitting their pre- and post-election voting system certifications or are submitting certifications with errors. The office represents there is no statutory or regulatory requirement for local jurisdictions to report certifications to the office. Without timely or accurate certifications, division cannot verify local jurisdictions' ensured voting systems accurately record election results or had not been altered or tampered with. Improving policies and procedures will provide procedural guidance to division personnel and local election officials to provide for consistent voting system approvals and oversight of election practices. Fifth, we recommend the division ensure compliance with HAVA grant, federal and state requirements. Federal guidelines require written procedures and internal controls for federal grant administration. the division's written procedures and internal controls or policies for federal grant administration inadequately reflect current federal requirements. Adequate policies are necessary to ensure the division's grant administration practices are documented and comply with federal requirements. Noncompliance with federal requirements creates the risk of losing access to federal funding or having to repay already expended funds to the federal government. We would like to thank the Secretary of State and her staff for their time and input throughout the audit. We would be happy to answer any questions the committee may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Domenici. Committee members, any questions for Ms. Domenici?
Governor?
Yes, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Governor, just need to have a quick disclosure here. I'm not going to be, this is not a voting item, but I'm not going to be asking questions or participating on anything concerning the recall petition, signature verification methodology. By way of disclosure, my law firm represents one of the parties in the current appeal of those recalls, and we also represented a party at the trial level. So I'll just be abstaining from any discussion or participation on that by way of disclosure. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Any other questions?
Yes, Governor, if I might, this is Barbara.
Yeah, no, Madam Secretary, I was going to give you the opportunity to respond
Okay.
first.
Oh, thank you.
We do have, obviously, as part of our packet, Appendix B, which is your response that's dated September 28th, 2018, but I'm sure you wanted to expand upon that. So please proceed.
Well, thank you so much, Governor, and committee members. I really appreciate this opportunity. And again, I want to thank you, Governor, for the foresight in asking us if we wanted some audits done in when we became newly elected 4 years ago. And so I've been very thrilled to work with this audit committee. They've been wonderful. Warren and Steve Weinberger and Warren Lohman, I just can't thank you enough over the years working with us and the different divisions that we've had. And I just really want to thank you. I do have Scott Anderson there, and I do have Wayne Thorley, Deputy of Elections, and Scott Anderson, my Chief Deputy, that are there to answer any of the questions. The thing that I really liked about this is they came up with a lot of the same things we did. When Wayne and I were discussing some of the things we wanted to do with the HAVA money, one of them was the audit methodology, and so it couldn't have come at a better timing for all of this to come together, getting the HAVA money, having the audit, and having one of Wayne Thorley's wishes granted. I always like to make sure my employees have their wishes granted. So with that, with that being said, I just again want to thank you, and we have advised them that we agree with all their recommendations. We've given them a time frame of when they'll be completed, and I thank you for the time, Governor, that you've allowed me to say something. And again, I just want to thank the audit group and for all of their calls, their time that they put in, and it was a lot. They did a lot. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I don't know if there are any questions, Mr. Thorley or Mr. Anderson. Did you want to provide any statement with regard to the audit?
Thank you, Governor. Scott Anderson for the record. I think the Secretary has said it all. We appreciate the work that the audit team has done for us, working hand in hand to make our division more efficient and looking at ways that we can improve the stations that the division auditors came up with, and we'll be working to meet those guidelines.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Domenici, any further presentation you wanted to make?
No, thank you, Governor.
All right, thank you very much. Next is agenda item 4B, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Report number 19-02.
Good afternoon, Governor and committee members. For the record, Craig Stevenson, Here to represent the Division of Forestry is State Forester Fire Warden Casey Casey. At the request of the Director of the Governor's Finance Office, we performed an audit on the Nevada Division of Forestry. Our audit focused on one objective: improving the efficiency and effectiveness of wildland fire administration. We made 4 recommendations. First, we recommend the division automate the wildland fire billing process. The current wildland fire billing process is time-consuming and requires manual entry of large amounts of data, which can result in billing delays and data entry errors. Other states, such as Utah and Colorado, use automated billing software. Utah reported over $100,000 in annual savings on seasonal staff expenses and was able to expedite its billing process. Automating the billing process would ensure timely reimbursement of the division's costs and eliminate the need to hire seasonal billing staff, which would result in cost avoidance of at least $15,000. Second, we recommend the division collaborate with the Nevada Department of Corrections, or NDOC, to expedite the billing process for the cost of conservation camp crew correctional officers. The NDOC billing process is time-consuming and costly because NDOC must compile and review correctional officer timesheets and backup documentation to determine the proper amount to bill for actual hours worked. The division cannot bill cooperators until it receives a bill from NDOC. Therefore, delays in the NDOC billing process often result in delays in receiving funds from cooperators. In addition, the division does not encumber funds or estimate correctional officer costs on fires. Not encumbering funds earlier in the year could result in the division having insufficient funds to pay NDOC bills. The division represents it has developed procedures to simplify its billing process, which in turn could help NDOC expedite its billing process. Another option is to use daily rates that incorporate hourly costs for correctional officers. This could expedite NDOC's billing process by allowing NDOC to apply the rate to the number of days worked. Other states such as Colorado, Idaho, and Oregon currently use daily rates. According to NDOC, this could result in freed up resources of up to $129,000 annually. Collaborating with NDOC to expedite the billing process would allow the division to bill cooperators more timely, receive reimbursement sooner, and more accurately encumber funds. Third, we recommend the division develop a strategic plan for the Wildland Fire Protection Program, or WFPP. The WFPP pays wildland firefighting costs for counties and fire districts to participate in the program. Each participant pays a quarterly premium to help cover the costs. The division has not established a strategic plan to determine the amount of costs to be covered by participant contributions. Additionally, the division does not track WFPP firefighting costs by participant or in total, which makes it difficult to determine the amount of costs to be covered. The Governor's Finance Office Budget Division's Planning Manual recommends agencies develop strategic plans in the budget process. Developing a strategic plan for the WFPP would allow the division to determine the costs to be covered by participant contributions and assist the division in preparing its budget. Fourth, we recommend the division seek authority to require participation in the WFPP. There is no mandatory requirement for counties and fire districts to join the WFPP, and the division lacks authority to compel participation. A major wildland fire in any of the non-participating jurisdictions may exceed their budget and require the state to bail out the county or fire district. Seeking authority to require participation in the WFPP would allow the division to offset costs when non-participants are unable to pay their wildland firefighting bills. We'd like to thank the division for their time throughout the audit, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And perhaps this is in here, but when you're talking about the WFPP, and perhaps Ms. Casey knows the answer to this as well, and if the county isn't a participant and they don't have the money to reimburse, what happens after that? Does the state just absorb that? And if they were a member of WFPP, what would happen in that event?
Governor, if they're a member of the WFPP, then the state pays for the cost of fighting the fire. After the fire goes beyond the 24 hours, which is the mutual aid. After that, then the state picks up. If they're not a member, the ones that are not members of the WFPP, they're supposed to pay for their own firefighting costs.
And if they don't, then the state just absorbs that as a practical matter anyway?
that's what we believe, that the state may end up bailing them out. That's why we're recommending that the ones that are not members of the WFPP, somehow, if they can no longer pay for their own firefighting costs, that they be compelled to join after the state bails them out.
Okay, thank you. All right, any questions from committee members for the auditors?
Governor,
Yes, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
just a couple of follow-up questions. I'm looking at the report, page 15 of 23, where you've got the summary of audit benefits, just as an easy way to ask my question. For recommendation 1 through 4, you've got the benefits, but I didn't see, maybe I just missed it, in terms of just any of the costs associated with these recommendations. For example, recommendation 1, automate the wildland fire billing process. And I know that the audit shows that was largely done manually. Is there a reason why that hasn't been automated before? For example, is there a cost associated with that kind of automation? And then my second question is, on recommendation 4, I assume this is a legislative fix. You'd have to have legislation to require participation in the WFPP.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. The recommendation number 1, there is a cost to it. The first year cost will be about $52,000. However, there are so many benefits involved in implementing that recommendation. As to the reason why we haven't implemented automated billing system before, I think we're going to defer that to Casey to answer that. And for recommendation number 4, yes, it will take a bill draft to actually implement.
Thank you.
Any further questions from committee members? Ms. Casey.
Thank you, Governor, members of the committee. For the record, Casey, State Forester Fire Warden for the Division of Forestry. First, I just wanted to thank staff, Craig, Vita, and Steve. You guys were great to work with. They sat with us the good portion of 3 months during a very busy fire season, and they were very accepting of some time frame issues we were having with billing staff being out of the office and people running and fighting fires. So we accepted all 4 recommendations as we stated in our memo, and 3 of which we had been working the greater part of 2 system. There are a lot of input systems, so we have our dispatch center during the initial attack. Everything that rolls out and that's dispatched out gets entered into our dispatch systems. None of those systems currently can speak to each other, so our process is very manual, as Craig and Vita had mentioned. We had looked at, the state of Utah had created it. Actually, the State Forestry Agency had created a mathematical equation, which I don't think we were very capable of doing at the time, but they did it and sold it to a company who now makes it available to all states. So we were kind of waiting for them to get through the process to see what this would look like. They have a couple years under their belt of using this system, and it's very good. It reduced the costs for the state of Nevada because a lot of it was borne by the state of Utah, and we get the benefits of everyone who has joined since then using that system. So we did write the TIN for that. The TIN has been approved, and we have that in our budget as a budgetary request.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. And just out of curiosity, which counties don't belong?
To the WFPP?
Yes.
Clark County, White Pine County, Esmeralda, let me look. And some counties are broken up by fire protection district because it depends on how the fire protection districts are formed in the county. So Reno Fire is out, but everyone else in Washoe County is in. There was a page in here. Those are the ones that I can remember.
So do you know how much the state has had to pay because some of these entities weren't members of the WFPP?
I don't know that in the last year the state has paid any. I know in the past we have the Carpenter 1 fire for Clark County. This year I'm not sure how many large fires those jurisdictions have had and if they've come to the emergency response account. I know how much we've paid for the other jurisdictions. It's a pretty large amount this year and last year in fire services. But I'm not sure how many have had to come forward with anything beyond the anticipated amounts.
And how much does it cost to join?
It depends. There were factors that were contemplated in the original, but then it went to an economics discussion. So first, it kind of depended on your risk, the areas of wildland-urban interface covered in your county or jurisdictional area. And then it was also based kind of on the economics and the ability to look at. And having an accurate reflection of fire cost is one of our biggest issues and hindrances. So we do have 5 years of fire cost for all of those who have been participants. We're going back right now. We're really close to getting the number on what we've paid out for each of those participants. For those who are non-participants, many of them don't have that cost in one easy bucket for us to put in there.
I mean, it's basically an insurance policy, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, basically. A lot of those county jurisdictions don't have enough in their budgets to pay for big years like the last two that we've seen, and certainly the devastating like Carpenter One fire down there, and the aftermath that happens after the fire as well. So it's an insurance policy. I think it's a good practice based on the statutes that the division has to have this relationship between the counties and the state.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. Committee members, any other questions for Ms. Casey? Any further presentation from the auditors? Yes, Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. Just wanted to say on page 12 of the report, footnote 6, we actually have a list of the non-participants. I also wanted to add that this recommendation was a kind of a just in case. We saw no evidence, at least since the WFPP has been in effect, that we actually had to bail somebody out. But we do know that they contribute some money to it in the form of a premium, if you consider it like an insurance program, like you said. And given that, if we ever did have to kick some money their way, at least we'd have some money from them to help out. The other thing I wanted to kind of address was the Lieutenant Governor's point about our $15,000. That's a very good point. You're correct that we didn't mention the cost of automating this system. We also didn't mention some of the other benefits, though. We were thinking that automating the system would speed up our collections time and reduce the amount of time that those receivables are out there. So we think there's some kind of time value of money element that would also help out. So we didn't include any of that. We do have the $15,000 because that's a known amount. You mentioned the schedule on page 9, or I'm sorry, tab 9, our dollar benefits. It's not on there as of right now. I'm not sure I'll put it on there. It's kind of a small amount anyway. But you have a very good point. You're right that net, it's probably going to be on the negative for a while, at least as far as what's known. But as I said, we're hoping that there'll be a time value of money element too, as a result of this speeding up of the collections.
Well, thank you, Mr. Weinberger. And the other piece, which the Attorney General and Secretary of State know as members of the Board of Examiners, and Ms. Casey knows this because we just visited about this, I think it was $3 million. We at times have to go into the IFC contingency fund to make sure that we're paying the vendors. And I know there's been some corrections in terms of, and it's in this audit with regard to adding staff and such so that we can get reimbursed as soon as possible so that we don't have to essentially keep borrowing from that IFC contingency fund. So that'll help in that regard in case something else bad happened and suddenly the IFC contingency fund was oversubscribed. So that's another piece to all of this. All right, any further questions or comments? There are none. Thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item number 5, which is another information item, presentation of the division's 6-month follow-up status reports. Mr. Lohman, I believe you're up first. The Department of Education report number 18-06.
Thank you, Governor. For the record, Warren Lohman. Representing the Department of Education is Deputy Superintendent Roger Ramey. Of the 3 recommendations that we made, the department has partially implemented all of them to develop a department-wide risk assessment for grant management, a department-wide recipient monitoring policy, and to improve physical monitoring. Based on the report from the department, they expect to fully implement these recommendations in concert by the end of the year. And we believe they're making progress, and we'll see at the end of the year how all of that comes together. That completes my overview.
Thank you, Mr. Lohman. And in the first recommendation, it says the department anticipates full implementation of this recommendation in August of 2018. Has that come to fruition, given it's October of 2018?
For the record, Roger Rami, Deputy Superintendent. So let me go through a little bit of process. I know it's a yes and no question. I understand that. So it has been implemented. We have actually developed the instrument. We have deployed the risk assessment questionnaire. We are now getting those responses back. We are scoring those. Based on those scores, that will inform us on the amount of monitoring required. So to the answer, it has been deployed, and we're hoping that we have the complete package built and we start doing a complete monitoring by the beginning of the next year. So the answer is yes, but it is something that continually will be in progress. And even though and when we have this built, we'll be refining it as the federal requirements change. But this has been a big leap for the department. It's been something that we have had numerous findings on. And the instrument that we built really aligns with the federal requirements for grant monitoring. So it's something, again, it's a big lift for the department that's never been done. So the answer is yes, but it will always be refined for the betterment of course, the department.
Understood. Thank you very much. Committee members, any further questions with regard to agenda item 5A? I hear none. Thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item 5B, which is the 6-month follow-up status report with regard to the Department of Taxation, report number 18-07. Mr. Lohman.
Thank you, Governor. For the record, Warren Lohman. Here representing the Department of Taxation is Director Bill Anderson and his leadership team. We'd like to compliment the department for very quickly getting with the Attorney General's office to implement our recommendation to collaborate to interpret statutes for LSST and BCCRT. The Attorney General's office has determined that the department has reasonably interpreted those statutes. That concludes my overview.
It's always a good result, isn't it? Director Anderson?
Thank you, Governor. Yes, that is a good result. I'll just, again, as I did last time, reiterate my thanks to the audit team. This has been a very smooth and seamless process, and even though it's resulting in no procedural changes in our department, it's still beneficial for us periodically to get into the weeds and look at the mechanics of how we do things. So, again, we appreciate the opportunity.
Committee members, any further questions or comments on this agenda item? Hear none. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item number 6, which is another information item, presentation of the division's ongoing follow-ups requested by the committee. Mr. Lohman, the Department of Health and Human Services, report number 10-06.
Thank you, Governor. For the record, Warren Lohman. Here representing the Department of Public and Behavioral Health, the Division of Public and Behavioral Health is Dr. Julie Kochever. This is our 11th in a long review that you first asked us to do many years ago, Governor, at the Ross and Neal Hospital and doctor attendance. In general, it's good news to the extent recent review found that, consistent with our previous review, about a third of the time of doctors in the inpatient hospital is for off-site hours, and we were able to newly track in the rapid stabilization unit, approximately 40% of those hours are performed for off-site work. The division reported that with this data, that the quality of care has not been compromised. The last thing that I would say is that we are still a bit concerned in that we recommended last time that the division establish criteria for off-site hours. That, as of this report, has has not occurred, so we would again recommend that they develop criteria for the off-site hours, but I believe Dr. Kochevar has an update on that as well. This concludes my overview.
Thank you, Mr. Lohman. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Lohman? There are none. Dr. Kochevar.
Hi. So I did ask staff, not having a lot of history as to why it had not been done. I asked staff why we didn't have criteria. They didn't articulate a very good response. So I have instructed them to establish a criteria to work with the internal auditors to make sure that it meets the expectation, and they'll have that done as soon as possible.
So let's get an example. So if there, at least according to this chart, let's say there's a 10-hour shift and 40% of it is spent off-site. What does the doctor say? I'm going to go do my notes somewhere else, or what is the explanation for going off-site?
So we did establish codes for what they were doing off-site. So some of it is off-site treatment team meetings. So if they're meeting with other team members, it's maybe not in the hospital. A lot of them supervise residents at both of the medical schools. We're the primary training site, particularly for forensic psychiatrists. And so they have to go to the medical schools to do off-site training with the residents. And then they also do case notes in the evening at home, and we can see when they sign into the system. So what I've actually asked them to do is not that I think that what they're doing off-site isn't a legitimate part of patient care, but then there's no reason not to have criteria and a method by which we track it better. And so that's the last piece really that I think we're going to implement.
No, thank you. And that was the issue way back in 2011, is there was a significant amount of unaccounted time. And so this has been a dramatic improvement. And as you say, everything that the doctors do off-site is legitimate. And so, again, this is just, this was an important issue because it was a bit of a shocker back in 2011, and that's why we've had so many follow-ups. But I really appreciate the division's attention to all of this, because at the end of the day, and we've said this many times, it just inures to the benefit of the patients, and that's what we all want. So thank you. Committee members, any questions with regard to agenda item 6A? I hear none. Thank you very much. We'll move to agenda item 6B, which is Department of Corrections, report number 13-03.
Governor, members of the committee, for the record, Vito Zuda, I'm presenting our follow-up of the Department of Corrections doctor attendance. Representing the department is Robin Hager, medical administrator, and John Borroman, deputy director. This is our sixth report on doctor attendance at correctional facilities. Our review shows the department has sustained improved doctor attendance since our initial audit. Full-time doctors are working on average 9.3 hours a day on a 10-hour, 4-day work week. And part-time doctors are working on average 8.4 hours on a day on a 10-hour, 2-day work week. While full-time doctor attendance increased by 1%, part-time doctor attendance decreased by 13% during the same period. In addition to our review of NDOC doctors, we also noted a psychologist logged on average 21 hours per week and was compensated for 40 hours. Subsequent follow-up disclosed that the doctor was assisting her supervisor on special projects in the administrative building, and none of the hours spent on the special project was documented. Although the psychologist is a classified employee, her hours should be documented similar to other doctors in the correctional facilities. In order to continue to maintain improved level of doctor attendance at these facilities, we recommend continued documentation and follow-up of doctor attendance issues, and also to verify and reconcile information reported on the medical professionals report to information on the in and out logs and the timesheets. We would like to thank the department for their cooperation and assistance during this review. This concludes my overview.
Thank you. Questions for the auditor?
Governor?
Yes, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you. I don't know if this is relevant or not, and I did miss the last meeting, but you had raised the issue of a significant shortfall in the Department of Corrections budget. And I don't know if this is covered in the presentation on this subject.
It is not. I mean, I think Mr. Barrowman has lived or died 1,000 lives. I'm not sure which, but this is not part of that that issue. But I will tell you, Mr. Treasurer, that there has been incredibly significant improvement in that regard.
Okay, good. No, I know, I think the point you raised was serious, and I get a lot of questions as treasurer as well. For example, the marijuana money, is that going for education? And my response is, I know there were some shortfalls, and my sense is that the money is going for some of these other purposes. But if you suggest that there have been some major improvements, that's good news.
Yeah. No, there have been significant improvement, and marijuana money and this have nothing to do with each other.
Okay, good. I appreciate the correction there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Barrowman, any comments? Ms. Hager?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Board. It has been a pleasure to work with the Internal Audits Division. The scope of the audit was expanded slightly to include some other classes, and we were very satisfied to see some of the information was consistent with what we were previously working on. And I do believe that we are monitoring these better. This has been productive for both the state and the department itself for the accountability, which we take seriously, and we believe that we'll continue to work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrowman. And then and I don't want to nitpick, but there is this comment with regard to some unaccounted hours during the day, the hour and a half or so for both the part-time and the full-time. Do you have any idea of what's happening there?
For the record, Robin Hager, Medical Administrator with the Nevada Department of Corrections. When I talk to the providers about the lack of hours or just that little bit that's not accounted for, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, we do have on-call pay, but just because that provider's not listed for on-call for that night, they're still taking phone calls for the inmates, and as things come up, they're all on call 24 hours because you may not be able to get a hold of one, but you can get a hold of another. Well, there's no way to track that per se because they're not at the actual facility. They also do training conferences. They also do staff meetings. They do stuff that's not at the institution. They go to the administrative buildings. So we're similar to DHHS in that they're doing other activities, case notes, whatever. There's just no way to document that, although we talked about, could they go in and put it on a timesheet or get a hold of providers as needed.
Thank you, Ms. Hager. Committee members, any further questions or comments with regard to agenda item 6B? I hear none. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, Mr. Controller, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
That's okay. I can hope that in the next 4 years, as we implement the Smart 21 project, its features will help you capture the detail that you can provide an explanation on that. Around here as governor at that point, but the project is ongoing and it'll produce great benefit.
Yes. All right, thank you. Agenda item 7, approval of the division's annual audit plan. Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. I just wanted to step back to number 6 real quick. We've been doing this annually, as you know, and do you feel there's any value in us continuing on?
Are you asking me to reduce your workload over there? Mr. Weinberger, I think that both the Department of Corrections and DHHS have over time established and demonstrated that they've improved dramatically in this regard. So I don't know if it's annual right now. I mean, I don't have any problem with discontinuing it, given the demonstration of improved performance, but I'm only one vote, or one person on the committee. Any other thoughts from other committee members?
Governor?
Yes, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you. Just a quick comment is, in effect, this is really the administration's responsibility or following through on its responsibility for oversight, and if I'm not mistaken, and I think that's an incredibly important function. So I would, in response to the question, think this is something well worth maintaining and continuing.
So, Mr. Weinberger, what would be the action, if any, that would needed to be taken? Because this is an information item. I mean, would we verbally advise you we don't need to do it anymore, or would it be a action item in the next agenda? I think, as I said, I've been looking at this for 7 years. The departments have responded and responded well. So I suppose I don't want to belabor all this, so I suppose we'll just put it on the agenda, and for however this committee is constituted next time, I'm saying all these things so they can have the benefit of the minutes in that next meeting, and that committee can decide for itself whether it wants to continue it. But for those committee members who do read the minutes, I think that the departments have performed and improved admirably. So thank you, Mr. Weinberger. We'll see how that gets transcribed, right? So let's move on to agenda item 7, Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. This is our proposed audit plan. This is an action item. You can see that we have, on the top, we have the audits we're requesting for approval for today. Bottom one is previously approved audits. The committee can amend this at their request.
Yeah, I do have a comment, Mr. Weinberger. Have we performed, or have you performed an audit on the Board of Dentistry recently? I thought we had, hadn't we?
Thank you, Governor. So the legislative auditors performed an audit, and by statute, we have to do a follow-up on the recommendations. We did do that, and I'm aware of some of the issues that were brought up at the last BOE, and actually, I guess I'd like to propose, in addition to this schedule, which would be for us to go take a look at the dental board, and specifically what we'd want to focus on is board oversight of the complaint process, the effectiveness of the review panel, consistency in disciplinary actions, and consistency in treatment of licensees subject to complaints.
You were ready for that, weren't you, Mr. Weinberger? So I agree. I thought that the testimony provided in public comment was very serious and warrants a follow-up to the legislative audit as well as the audit that we've done. So with the committee's permission, I'd like to add a follow-up audit as presented by Mr. Weinberger. Mr. Controller.
Thank you, Governor, and that sounds like a good idea. What would be the estimated completion date?
Thank you, Mr. Controller. We are hoping to have another audit committee meeting in June. We're not sure about one earlier because obviously at this point we're not even sure who the chair will be. But we do want to schedule another meeting this June at which we would report this audit out.
Any further presentation, Mr. Weinberger, on agenda item number 7?
No, that's like I said, it's an action item.
Okay. All right, thank you. Then if any further questions or comments, if there are none, Chair will accept the motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just, if I may, just quick question. I remember again, and this may be relevant or not, but there was a presentation on the taxi cab commission, and this may be totally outside the scope of the audit bureau, but was there any follow-up on that, or did that come to some sort of conclusion?
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah.
We did an audit of the tax cap authority a few years back. We've actually done the audit, presented it, done our statutorily required 6-month follow-up, presented that also to this committee. I believe all of the recommendations that we issued have been implemented at this point in time. So we don't have any immediate plans to go revisit the tax cap authority.
Okay, good, thank you. I just, I may have been not paying attention to your report on that, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Treasurer. So the chair will accept a motion to approve the division's audit plan as presented in agenda item number 7 with the addition of the dental board.
Yeah.
Governor, move to approve the division's audit plan with the addition of the Board of Dentistry added to the requested audits for under October 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. So the Lieutenant Governor has moved. The Controller has seconded. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I hear none. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. That motion passes unanimously. Just for purposes of the record, the Attorney General has departed, so he did not participate in this vote. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 8, which is approval of the division's annual report released September 30, 2017. Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. As you stated, this is our 2018 annual report. It summarizes our accomplishments as well as our performance measures for fiscal year 2018. And this is something I present every year, so I'm here to answer any questions the committee may have.
Any questions from committee members? Mr. Controller.
Governor, okay.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Weinberger, first of all, fine job by you and everybody associated with the audit division. But I want to go to the last real number in this report at page 16 for FY 2018. Your average annual rating from surveys after reviews dropped down to 3.1. You were hoping for 4.5. You had achieved that and more the year before, and you're hoping for it again in FY 19. Can you tell us any information content in that rating, any feedback that you got from the agencies or anything that would help us or help you?
Thank you, Mr. Controller, for the question. To start off, so we did 8 compliance reviews that fiscal year 18. We did not get responses from all 8. I'm going to call Lori Hoover up. I'm sorry. She's in charge of this. But go ahead.
For the record, Lori Hoover. Yes, as Steve Weinberger was stating, we did very few due to some changeover in personnel. We only did 8 compliance reviews, and we did not get responses from all of them. A couple of them were a little bit lower. Some of the questions are asking if they're getting, if it's a helpful process. And the problem is some of these are repetitive, so they're not necessarily always as helpful as they can be. So we are looking at trying to determine why they were so low, and we are going to work with agencies to get that up higher.
Thank you. Can I just add, we are going to do a better job of trying to make sure we get response results from every agency so we have a bigger sample. Also, in this particular case, from what I understand, ironically, we received a lower score from someone who had no exceptions because one of the questions was this valuable or have you gained anything from this? And they basically said, well, you didn't teach us anything new. So I think that was the explanation for the low score we received. But in the future, we're going to try and make sure we get all of our responses back.
First of all, this is just an outlier number in the whole report. As I said, the whole report's good. You're dealing also with the law of small numbers, that things can become meaningless for reasons like you've just explained, or not very meaningful. I would say that, frankly, I would look at a no no recommendations report, no exceptions report.
Thank you, Mr. Controller. Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Percentage of recommendations implemented, 97. I think you're doing a great job. I know that nobody's suggesting otherwise, but I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, you want to be courteous, you want to be kind, you want to be empathetic, but you also want to be effective. And sometimes when you're effective, people don't like what auditors have to say. And you wouldn't be the first auditors to give maybe a low rating for people who are being audited. So just a comment on that point. But let me move you back to page 10, performance measures. Again, just this is what I wanted to kind of focus on when I mentioned that I was going to wait for this agenda item in the beginning of our meeting. Just very impressive, I think, results coming out of your office, Administrator Weinberger, members of your staff. What you've done here for every $1 spent on the executive branch audit section benefits the state by $71. And you note that you try to be efficient and effective in terms of the results of these audits, and you try to be very solution-based, but you really can't quantify everything. Not only the safety and welfare, as you mentioned, but I've made a note here also just trust in government and what government is doing for the citizenry. So what you can quantify is impressive, and I agree with you. There are unquantifiable benefits that your office provides to the state of Nevada, and I just wanted to thank you for, again, your thoroughness and your professionalism in every audit that we've been involved in, speaking for myself as a member of this committee. Thank you very much. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Committee members, any further questions or comments with regard to agenda item number 8? If there are none, the chair will accept a motion to approve the division's annual report released September 30, 2017. So moved. Controller has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion? Hear none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 9, which is an information item, presentation of the estimated benefits to Nevadans from the division's recommendations. Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. So this is the detailed support for our $71 calculation of our estimated benefits. I know I've covered this before, but we carry these 9 years unless something comes to our attention that basically notes that it will not be in effect for 9 years, so we'll adjust it accordingly. And I don't take credit for these until we actually go out and verify that our recommendation has been implemented and following the intent that we had in mind when we did the audit. And with that, I'll take any questions on this.
Questions from committee members. It speaks for itself. It's very impressive, and it's kind of fun, I guess, in a weird way, to go through those columns and see the different departments and the specific savings that have been generated as a result of the audits. Mr. Controller.
Thank you, Governor. And Mr. Weinberger, long ago when I was a newly minted regent, I asked the people at DRI when they gave me a 20-to-1 or some such ratio of external funding to state funding, does that mean that if we gave you another $1, you'd bring us 20 more? I'm not going to ask you that question, but I am going to ask you one here on page 1. You've got this audit number 1605, identified dollar benefit of $82,000 for automating the debt offset process, and you've got a half-year worth of that. Let me just put on the record that since the project went live a little over a year ago, we have documented an increase by the Controller's Office debt collection folks of over 1.25 million, almost 1.3 million in the first year in increased debt collections. And I hope when you go back and look at this, you'll look at that. And that should be a continuing continuing revenue stream. I don't know whether it'll be at exactly 1.3 million a year or whatever, but it'll be a continuing increase, and that's the great benefit to the fact that we worked with the AG's office, we worked with finance and other agencies, and we worked with the contractor to turn around this very troubled project and get it online. And because we did, and we were successful, the state and the people of Nevada will, and the departments will benefit on a sustained basis. So check that out for the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Controller. We will definitely do that. This $41,000 pertains specifically to the debt offset, where you've updated the vendor listing, basically, if they owe us some money. So someone tries to cut them a check, they get a message that says, call the controller first. But if you look at our outstanding recommendations, which I think, actually it is, it's our next tab, you'll see those collections recommendations, and we continue to do annual follow-ups, and hopefully that'll move from that tab to this tab with some numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Weinberger. Committee members, any further questions on agenda item number 9? There are none. Let's move to agenda item number 10, which is another information item, presentation of the status of the division's outstanding audit recommendations. Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. This is as of June 30th, and again, I will field any questions the committee may have.
Questions from committee members on agenda item number 10? There are none. Let's move to agenda item number 11. Information item, presentation of modifications to the self-assessment questionnaire used by agencies to determine compliance with the uniform system of internal accounting and administrative control developed pursuant to NRS 353A.020. Mr. Weinberger.
Thank you, Governor. So I have Laurie Hoover up here with me. She's actually the one who administers this system, and she's the one who actually made all these changes. So I will turn it over to Ms. Hoover.
Lori Hoover for the record. Most of these questionnaires have not been updated since 2009, so we decided to take a look at them, see if we should make some changes. The changes have been made either to clarify questions based on agencies not necessarily understanding them the way we thought that we had presented them, modifying them based on different requirements for statutes or state administrative manuals, and then also adding some best practices that we noticed had not been included in there.
Where did you acquire the best practices? Is there like model comments or what have you?
For the record, Lori Hoover. Actually, there's quite a few out there if you start Googling internal controls. And so you look at the Institute of Internal Auditors, they have, that organization, that website offers some. There's a lot of educational entities out there that put their own internal control processes online. So we go out and just take a look and see what we believe appears to be you see that it's the same processes over and over again, and if they're not included in ours, and we've seen that most of the agencies are already doing some of those things, but we want to make sure that they're in writing.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions or comments with regard to agenda item number 11?
Governor.
Yes, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Just what are just as I've gone through this, I see there's a lot of additions and some deletions. Two questions. One is what are the top substantive or material changes or additions that you've made that you think really will make a difference in terms of what the agencies are reporting? And then second, with just so many additions, do you think that this has become somewhat burdensome to these agencies to take the time away from performing their other duties to fill out?
Performing, just some controls over deposit slips, checks in the revenue section. Also, in your second question about whether it's becoming cumbersome, the requirement to complete these was changed from annual to biannual, so they do not have to do it every year. But these internal controls should be part of their everyday process, and they should be part of their written procedures. So it should not necessarily be cumbersome to them, because it's something that they should have already incorporated and they should be doing daily, weekly, monthly, annually already. It's just a checkbox to make sure that they still are doing those particular controls.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Committee members, any other questions or comments with regard to agenda item number 11? There are none. Good work, Ms. Hoover. Thank you. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 12, which are committee member comments. Do the committee members have any comments? Mr. Controller.
Thank you, Governor, and I'd like to echo the comments that you, the treasurer, and the lieutenant governor made earlier today about the fine work of the audit division staff. As one who's been on the receiving end of it, I think I said in the minutes from last time that it was such a benefit that I think agencies should look at it as an opportunity. They should look at it as a blessing. They should welcome it instead of running from it. And I still think that after 4 years of sitting up here. We'll see if I'm sitting here next June, but it's been a pleasure to work with you all. It's been a pleasure to work with the governor, the lieutenant governor, the treasurer, and I hope, of course, it's been a pleasure to work with the AG and the secretary and Ms. Cross, and I hope to see all of us back after the turn of the year. I do understand through the grapevine that somebody here may be leaving at the turn of the year. Is that true?
If you're referring to me, that
Yes,
is
sir.
true. I've got I just about have my...
To state employees and to state operations, and you and your people can take a lot of congratulations from all of us for doing a lot to help the public interest and to help state operations. Thank you very much, and best wishes to you.
Governor?
Yes, Madam Secretary.
Thank you so much, Governor. I do want to say for this Executive Branch Audit Committee meeting that I am thrilled to have served with all of you. And it's been a great honor for me to be here. And Steve, I did not know that you were thinking of retiring. You didn't ask us when we last saw you. So I don't know that you have permission to retire. But I just want to thank you, Steve, for everything as well. But Governor, this was one of the great ideas. I'm really pleased to have been a part of it, and I thank you for your guidance in allowing us to have our agencies audited, and for the expertise that we got from the audit committee and from the auditors themselves, the suggestions and working with us. So I just wanted to tell you all thank you. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Governor.
Yes, Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you. As a sign-off, again, I made some remarks earlier. I want to thank everyone. Mr. Weinberger, good luck in your forward life. And just one request. I think this is a very important board. I think what we do is very important. It really underscores the oversight responsibility of the administration, and would just request that going forward, many of us won't be here, but that whoever is here really take this committee's responsibility seriously, that the recommendations be honest, and that the follow-up be serious. So thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, and again, my thanks to all of you at the Executive Audit. And this was the idea of Governor Gwynn, and it just was one of his brilliant legacies, and it has proven itself out meeting after meeting. Mr. Weinberger, I too was not aware that you will be moving on, but again, my personal thanks to you for being such a great leader to this department. And I wish you well in whatever you're doing. Maybe we'll see each other camping or something someday. But in any event, my personal thanks for what you've done.
Thank you so much. I wanted to just take a second and thank the committee for all your support over our last 4 years. And it's been an incredible honor and privilege to report to this committee. And special thanks to Governor Sandoval for the leadership you've shown to our office and actually to the state of Nevada too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's an applause line.
That really means a lot. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to public comment. Is there any member of the public present in Carson City that would like to provide public comment to the committee? I hear and see no one. Is there anyone present in Las Vegas that would like to provide public comment to the committee?
None here, Governor.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Madam Secretary has moved to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the treasurer. Any questions? I didn't think so. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is adjourned.